beyond the valley. What if I told you that Psalm 23 is not just about comfort in dark times, but a roadmap for living beyond the valley? Most people only remember this psalm at funerals or moments of grief, but David didn't write it as a farewell. He wrote it as a declaration of life. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, isn't a whisper of hope, it's a roar of certainty. And here's the tension. So many still live trapped in cycles of fear, lack, and confusion, as if those words were just poetry instead of power. But Psalm 23 flips the script, because it reminds us that valleys are not destinations, they are passages. Think about it. The psalm doesn't say if you walk through the valley, but when. The shadows are real, the enemies are real, the struggles are real, but they are not the end. The shepherd doesn't abandon you in the middle. He walks you through to the other side. That's why this psalm is more than a comforting poem. It's a survival manual and a victory proclamation rolled into one. But here's the twist. Victory doesn't start when the valley ends. It starts in the valley itself. That's where God restores your soul, leads your steps, defends your ground, and sets you up for reward. And before we finish, you'll see how this psalm isn't just history, it's your lifestyle. So stay with me, because what comes next might change how you see Psalm 23 forever. The shepherd restores. Here's the first secret many people miss. Before David talks about walking through valleys or feasting at tables, he says, "He restores my soul." Notice the order. Restoration comes before confrontation. Why? Because you can't face enemies or endure valleys if your inner life is already collapsing. And here's the truth most of us avoid. Sometimes the greatest battles aren't external, but internal. It's the exhaustion, the burnout, the hidden wounds that drain you before you even step into the fight. Psalm 23 reminds us that the shepherd doesn't just care about what happens around you. He cares about what's happening inside you. Think about sheep. They are fragile animals, easily stressed, easily scattered, easily wounded. A good shepherd knows that before leading them anywhere, he must calm them, tend to their injuries, and restore their strength. That's the same with us. Maybe you've been running on empty, trying to keep it all together while quietly falling apart. But God doesn't just push you forward. He pauses to heal. Restoration means He takes your shattered pieces and makes you whole again, not patched up, but renewed. And here's the part that changes everything. Restoration is not just emotional, it's spiritual. When David says He restores my soul, he's talking about alignment with God's presence, peace replacing panic, clarity replacing confusion, hope replacing despair. That's why restoration comes first, because only when your soul is restored can you walk through valleys with courage. But wait, it gets even better. Because restoration isn't the end of the shepherd's work, it's only the beginning. Next, we'll see how He doesn't just restore, He leads. And that guidance can transform every step you take. The shepherd leads. After restoring your soul, the shepherd doesn't just leave you standing still. He leads. David writes, "He leads me in paths of righteousness for His name's sake." That phrase is loaded. Notice, it's not, "I figured out the right path," or "I stumbled into righteousness." It's "He leads me." In other words, the responsibility of direction is on Him, not on you. That should lift a huge weight off your shoulders. Because let's be real, how many times have you felt lost, stuck between decisions, or terrified of making the wrong move? Psalm 23 reminds us that your role isn't to map out the future. It's to follow the shepherd who already knows the way. Now here's the kicker. The paths He leads us on aren't always the ones we would choose. Sometimes the route to peace feels like chaos at first. Sometimes the road to blessing looks like detours and delays. But that's where the phrase "for His name's sake" changes everything. His reputation is tied to your journey. That means, when He leads you, He's not just protecting your outcome, He's protecting His own name. If God has staked His honor on guiding you, then you can trust He won't abandon you halfway. Think of it like this. Sheep don't need to understand the terrain. They just need to stay close to the shepherd. And yet, here's the paradox. Many of us try to outrun Him, second-guess Him, or even argue with His direction. But every time we've taken detours, He's still been faithful to pull us back. That's the beauty of divine leadership. It's not about your perfection. It's about His persistence. So when you feel disoriented, remember, righteous paths are not random. They are deliberate, guided, and purposeful. And the most shocking part, sometimes those very paths lead straight into the valley. But don't panic. The shepherd never leads where he won't also defend. And that's exactly where we're headed next. The shepherd defends. And here's where Psalm 23 takes a dramatic turn. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Notice that David doesn't say if I walk through the valley, but when. Valleys are not optional. They're part of life. Dark seasons, crushing pressures, nights that feel endless, they come for all of us. But here's the revelation. The presence of the shepherd doesn't always remove the valley, but it transforms how we walk through it. Fear loses its grip, not because the valley is safe, but because the shepherd is near. Now, let's unpack those tools. The rod and the staff. The rod was a weapon, used to strike predators that threatened the flock. The staff, with its curved hook, was for guidance and rescue, pulling sheep away from danger or back onto the right path. Together they paint a picture of both protection and direction. That means when you've been spared from dangers you never saw, that was His rod at work. And when you've felt conviction, correction, or that inner nudge to turn around, that was His staff. He is not a passive guardian. He's an active defender. But here comes the shocking twist. David says comfort comes not after the valley, but in the valley. Comfort doesn't mean the shadows disappear. It means the shadows don't own you. Some of your deepest encounters with God don't happen on the mountaintops, but in the lowest pits where you realize He never left your side. Evil exists, yes, but it cannot win. That's why this psalm isn't naive optimism. It's battle-tested faith. And just when you think survival is the best you can hope for, the shepherd flips the story. He doesn't just defend you in the valley. He sets a table in front of your enemies. And that shocking twist is where we go next. The shepherd rewards. Just when you expect Psalm 23 to keep the tone of survival, David flips the script with one of the boldest declarations. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Think about that. God doesn't just remove your enemies, He blesses you right in front of them. This is not escape, this is elevation. The same valley meant to break you becomes the stage where God displays His glory. The shepherd doesn't just defend, He rewards, and He does it publicly. Now, let's talk about the table. In ancient culture, to sit at someone's table wasn't just about food. It meant honor, protection, and belonging. Here the shepherd isn't rushing you out of danger. He's slowing you down to dine in front of it. That table says, you're mine, you're covered, you're celebrated. And when David mentions oil, he's drawing on the image of anointing. Kings were anointed with oil to mark favor and authority. In other words, your pain is not wasted. God uses it to promote you, to give you authority you never had before, to pour so much into your cup that it spills into the lives of others. But wait, the key detail is where this happens, right in the presence of my enemies. Why? Because the shepherd isn't trying to hide your victory, he's putting it on display. The ones who doubted you, the battles that tried to bury you, the storms that mocked your faith, they all have to sit and watch as God lifts you higher. That's why David's tone shifts from desperation to celebration. The shepherd rewards not just with survival, but with abundance, favor, and overflowing joy. And yet, this isn't the final destination. Because after the table comes the promise of something eternal, dwelling in the house of the Lord forever. And that's where we go next. The shepherd dwells. Here's the final crescendo of Psalm 23. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Notice how the psalm doesn't end in the valley, doesn't end at the table. It ends in a home. That's not by accident. The shepherd's goal is not just to provide for you or protect you temporarily. His ultimate desire is to bring you into His presence permanently. David is saying, I'm not just passing through, this is where I belong. And that shift from visiting to dwelling changes everything. Think about the words, goodness and mercy. They're not passive qualities, they're active companions. In the original Hebrew, the word for follow actually means to pursue relentlessly. That means you don't have to chase blessings. Blessings are chasing you. Every time you thought you barely made it out alive, it was goodness and mercy running after you. Every closed door that redirected you, every undeserved second chance, every moment you were carried when you couldn't walk, that was mercy on your heels. You're not outrunning your shepherd. You're being chased down by His love. And here's the twist most people miss. Dwelling in the house of the Lord isn't just about eternity in heaven. It's about living right now with a mindset of presence. Imagine your life as a house, every room filled with God's peace, every hallway echoing with His promises, every door sealed with His protection. That's what David is proclaiming, not just a future hope but a present reality. You don't just visit God on Sundays, you dwell with Him every day. That's why this psalm isn't just poetry, it's a lifestyle. And maybe that's the invitation for us today, to stop living like guests in God's presence and start living like residents. But the real question is, are you ready to live Psalm 23, not just recite it? Psalm 23 is lifestyle. So here's where it all comes together. Psalm 23 isn't just a passage to whisper at funerals or a line to frame on the wall, it's a map for living. It begins with provision in green pastures, walks us through protection in dark valleys, elevates us at the table of honor, and ends with the ultimate promise to dwell in the presence of God forever. It's not theory, it's practice. And the secret is this: you don't earn any of it. You receive it because the shepherd is faithful. That's why this psalm has lasted for thousands of years. It speaks to every valley, every victory, every season of life. But let me challenge you. Will you let Psalm 23 be more than just words? Will you live as if lack has no claim over you, as if fear has no power in your valley, as if mercy is actually chasing you right now? Because the shepherd's promise is bigger than comfort. It's transformation. This isn't about survival. It's about walking in overflow. And here's the truth. Your valley doesn't get the last word. The shepherd does. So before you scroll away, I want to hear from you. Drop this phrase in the comments as your declaration, "The Lord is my shepherd." Let it be more than a comment. Let it be your headline, your testimony, your lifestyle. And tell me which part of Psalm 23 speaks louder to you right now. The provision, the protection, or the pursuit. Your answer might just encourage someone else who's walking through their valley today.